Hey guys, it's Randy with Lowbuck LS again, and this week we're going to be installing this air-to-water intercooler in the truck and finishing up the cold side, I guess you call it, basically the piping from the turbo to the intercooler and from the intercooler to the throttle body. So I'll flip the camera around and we'll get started. Okay, we'll start at the turbo. So turbo's sitting, as you can see, in the right front corner of my engine bay there. So we're gonna I'm gonna use this just a Mishimoto straight 2.5 inch straight silicone coupler. We're going to put that on the outlet of the turbo and then run a straight piece of 2.5 inch tubing, and because of how far the intercooler comes down, we're gonna end up having to go underneath that frame rail down there and come up in front of the sway bar there. So basically right now I'm gonna put that 2.5 inch coupler on there and cut a straight piece of pipe that's long enough to get us underneath that frame rail. Okay, so I got that 2.5 inch silicone coupler onto the turbo, and then I cut a 15 inch piece of 2.5 inch exhaust pipe and put an elbow at the other end of it. So we'll go have a look under the truck there and show you how which way I'm gonna go with it. So we're underneath the truck now, looking up at the turbo. So that pipe's just gonna come down, and then I got another 2.5 inch elbow, and it's gonna, let me try to back up a bit here. It's basically gonna come underneath that frame rail right in front of the sway bar there and head across to, it'll come up over here somewhere to connect up to that intercooler. Okay, we're gonna put that intercooler in now. So it's a 3 inch in and out air to water intercooler. I think it's from CX Racing, but I just bought it secondhand from a guy on Facebook. So it's 3 inch, so I've got a 3 inch silicone elbow where it's gonna hook up to this pipe going to the throttle body there. And then on the bottom, I've got a 3 inch to 2.5 silicone adapter. So, because the rest of the outlet of the turbo is 2.5, so the piping between the turbo and the intercooler is going to be 2.5 inch, and from the intercooler to the throttle body is going to be 3 inch. Up until that is a 3 inch to, I think where it goes to the throttle body is like 3 3/4, I think. So that's the only piece that isn't Mishimoto. I think that's Turbo Smart or something like that. All the other pieces are these Mishimoto silicone couplers from Summit Racing. Okay, so I got that intercooler in there now, as you can see, and just to support it while I finish up the piping at the bottom there, I've just got like a 1 liter bottle of mineral spirits or something between the cross member and the intercooler, and I also had to angle it a little bit to get it forward enough to clear that sway bar down there. So you'll see it's in at a bit of an angle. The problem that's going to cause is I'm still wanting to fit an electric fan between that intercooler and the radiator, so going to be a little tight on room there, but we'll worry about that when it's time to put the fan in. We might end up having to shorten this assembly up somehow or something, but anyways, right now I will go underneath the truck and get some measurements and figure out what lengths of pipe we need to finish up that connection from that elbow down there that goes underneath the frame rail. We'll have to put another elbow obviously and then come up into this intercooler. And there you can see that elbow, and I cut, I think this is like a 6.5 inch piece of pipe to go underneath that frame rail. Now I'm going to put another one of these 2.5 inch elbows right here going up into the bottom of the intercooler. So there's the piece that goes underneath the frame rail. Now we'll go have a look at it from the top. I cut another straight piece of 2.5 inch pipe there to go up into the intercooler. And there you can see the other side of it from the top here. You can see that elbow coming around the frame rail and the short piece of 2.5 inch pipe, that 2.5 to 3 adapter, and then up into the intercooler, and from the intercooler to that piece where I had my intake air temperature sensor, and then other adapter into the throttle body. So cold side is basically done. Now we got to work on plumbing in a couple water lines here for to run water through it. So this is kind of just going to be a temporary setup, so but we'll get that plumbed in so we can get some water pumping through that intercooler. Okay, to plumb in to get some water flowing through this intercooler. And like I said, this is just going to be a temporary thing. This is one of them deals where what I thought I was ordering on Amazon and what actually showed up, like I ordered a 12 volt pump and I thought it was going to be like big, like, and it's fits in the palm of my hand. So that's obviously not going to flow enough water, I don't think, for to keep that intercooler cool. But right now it's all I've got, so I'm gonna hook it up. And as a water reservoir, I got a coolant reservoir. I think it's out of like a 2003 Chevy truck actually, but it's a Dorman 603-100. So I'm gonna mount that under the hood somewhere. And then I got some various hoses and fittings and stuff here. Basically gonna come out of that coolant tank into this pump, out of this pump into the bottom of the intercooler, and then out of the top of the intercooler back to this tank here. So I'll start working on getting that rigged up. Okay, I'm gonna start by moving my 3-bar map sensor, which I've got screwed to the firewall there. I'm gonna move it over a foot or so to the right, or as far as I need to, and then I'm going to mount this coolant reservoir, drill a couple holes and screw it to the firewall where that 3-bar map sensor is right now. Alright, so as you can see, I've got that 3-bar map sensor moved over and got that coolant reservoir mounted to the firewall there. So now the pump is going to have to be mounted below that tank, so I'm thinking I might have to thread it or mount it to that inner fender well down there somewhere. So, but before I mount it permanently, I'm just gonna get all the hoses ran and just make sure it works before I get too carried away here. So we'll get that get the hoses ran. Actually, I might just run from that outlet of the tank into the pump and then just loop it back into the tank here just to see how much that pump puts out before I go ahead and plumb it into the intercooler there. Okay, so I got this little pump plumbed in just in a very temporary way. I got a piece of 1/2 inch vinyl tubing going down to the pump out of that tank, and then I got a piece of 3/8 tubing coming out of there, and then I can just stick it in the tank here and it'll just circulate water so I can see how much it's going to flow. But based on the size of the wires here, like, there's no way that's gonna draw enough current to move much water. So like I said, this is gonna kind of be a temporary deal until I can get a bigger pump, but like I said, right now it's the only one I got, so we will rig up some temporary power for this and see if it moves any water. Okay, so I just got a temporary power wire run here. I'm just got it hooked up to the battery there, and then I ran it through a little switch here. So I haven't tested it yet, but when I turn this switch on, that pump should start. So I got a big jug of water here. I'm going to put some water in that reservoir, and we'll kick this thing on and see if it pumps. Okay, I'm going to kick this switch on, and we'll see what happens here. Oh. Actually pumping a reasonable amount of water. I think I see an issue here though. It looks like, I'm thinking that outlet of the tank, it looks like there's like air bubbles or whatever. It doesn't look like it's a solid flow of suction to that pump, so I might have to try and, I don't know, drill out that drain on the bottom of the tank a bit, but it's actually flowing more than I expected here. It might actually work okay. Okay, so I think I might have improved my flow a little bit. Inside that bottom outlet of the tank was this steel insert, which I think is to keep from collapsing that, but I think it was pushed in too far and kind of restricting the flow, so I took a drill bit and basically got that metal insert out of there, so I think it'll flow better now. Okay, I got that tank back in with that little metal tube removed, and now it seems to be something pretty good. Now we'll get her hooked up to the intercooler here. Okay, now I'm gonna hop under the truck and thread this assembly into the bottom of the intercooler there, and that's where the line from the discharge of that little pump is gonna hook up to pump water into the bottom of the intercooler. Okay, there you can see that fitting in the bottom of the intercooler with the hose hooked up to it, and there you can see that charge piping between the turbo and the intercooler. Okay, now you can see I've got a similar fitting threaded into the top of the intercooler. Now I'm just going to take some of this 1/2-inch vinyl hose, run it along the edge of the engine compartment here, and hook it back up to this reservoir here. Okay, now you can see I've got that hose hooked up to the top of the intercooler, runs down underneath the front of the turbo. I've got it screwed to the back of the headlight bracket there to keep it away from the wastegate, and I'll just move here and then from this other angle here you can see it continues around. I put another zip tie with a hole in it there to screw it to keep it as far away as I can from my fender exit exhaust there, and then it goes around there and hooks up to the top of the reservoir. So now I'm going to turn this switch on, and it should be circulating through that intercooler. And yeah, you can, I don't know if you can tell very well, but those lines are all full of water, and you can probably hear it gurgling back into that tank. If I take this lid off, the water's probably going to go spraying all over the place, so maybe I won't do that, but seems like it's circulating decently. So now all I have to do is basically, I think I'm gonna just, no, you can't see very good down there. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna screw that pump into this inner fender well, and then I have to run a permanent source of power for this little pump. Okay, I don't know how well you guys can see this, but I've got that little pump screwed to the inner fender well now. So to finish up the wiring, I'm going to extend the leads for this pump. I crimped and put heat shrink tubing, and I'm just going to extend the leads for the pump. And then I'm going to, just like I did with my that intake air temperature sensor, it's basically going to look like that. I'm going to slide another piece of shrink tube over top of this connection and shrink it down. And then we're going to run the wire around that way, follow that red wire there, and take it into the cab of the truck so we can put a switch on it. Okay, and there you can see I've got that wire heat shrunk down and extended. So now I'm going to fish it into the cab, and while I'm at it, in the next video or one coming up soon, I'm going to be installing this boost gauge, and that's going to need this piece of plastic tubing ran. It's going to come off that 1/8 pipe plug on the turbo, so it's basically going to have to follow the same route. So I'm going to fish that in there too while I'm at it. Okay, I had a little change of plans here. This little chunk of tubing that came with that boost gauge isn't long enough to reach from here to my boost gauge in the cab, so I just ran a chunk of this 1/4 inch line that I had. But then you can see I ran the wire for this little intercooler water pump. Everything goes back around behind the intake there, and then comes out there, and in behind there it transitions from that little black wire to this gray cable. It just runs up behind the brake fluid reservoir and into the cab. So now we'll go inside the truck. Okay, so obviously we're inside the truck now. So I've got this wire, or pair of wires I guess, goes under the hood to that pump, and then this wire goes over. I got the dash all ripped apart here, and it's coming out by the airbag switch there, so that's going to be my switch. So basically I've got one of these deals where, let me pull it out here, you can pull out an existing fuse. So I picked one that's switched, like comes on when the ignition comes on, and then it's got a space. This fuse that's in here is the fuse for whatever that circuit powers, and then there's a space for another fuse here, which will be the fuse for this wire, which is going to supply power for this pump. Okay, so I got this all wired up. So like I said, I pulled out an existing fuse that comes on when the key is on, and you can see there's an orange fuse closest to me. That's the fuse that supplies power to this wire and the pump, and the red 10 amp fuse in behind it there is what supplies power to whatever was in that. We could probably look at it and see on this chart here. I don't know, I think it's this SEO accessory, so but anyways, so power comes out on this red wire through this switch. I just got it ran out this hole for because on the back of this panel there's like these ribs, or basically it's not going to be very easy to mount this switch in there, so just got it sitting there for now. I'm going to do something more permanent later because I'm going to have more switches, so I might even pull out that stereo and just make a switch panel there. But anyways, so power goes through that switch and then out to the pump, and then the ground wire comes back, and I've just got it screwed to some metal under the dash there. So now we should be able to turn the key on. Just just wait for the dinging to stop here. Now if we kick this switch on, the pump should start. We'll listen if we can hear it. I don't know if you can hear that, but we'll go around. And it is pumping and circulating. So now if we turn the key off, even if we leave that switch on, this pump should stop. So we'll just try that. Crap, I just locked myself out of my truck. I'm dumb. Okay, so that was a bonehead move. Had to go grab my spare key. Now, if we shut this key off, that pump should stop. Which it sounds like it did. I'll just go confirm that. Keys are in my hand, so I didn't lock myself out again. And that pump has stopped, so everything's working the way it should. So that's going to be it for this one. We now have a working intercooler and pump. So next thing's coming up, we've got to install that boost gauge, and then I also gonna have to redo some stuff on my PCV system here. So stay tuned for that. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you on the next one. Bye for now.